Fox Sports' Colin Cowherd is an absolute moron, ladies and gentlemen, and today I'm going to be exposing some of the terrible takes he has had on the Pittsburgh Steelers throughout the 2025 offseason. I've got 5 takes on the Steelers that he has made that are absolutely ridiculous, and today we're going to be going off right here on Steelers Talk. Now make sure you guys click that thumbs up icon before we get into the 5 terrible takes from this guy right here. If you think he's a clown, you think that he doesn't know anything about ball, click that thumbs up icon right now to help out the show and let me know if you think Cowherd is an idiot. All right, so let's get into the first clown take from Mr. Colin Cowherd here, which is that the DK Metcalf trade was a bad one. All right, so let's take a look at what he had to say all the way back in March when the Steelers pulled off this mega deal for DK Metcalf. He said, DK Metcalf to the Steelers for $150 million in 5 years. That's buying a house to save the marriage. The Steelers can't get the offensive line right. They can't get quarterback right. They spend too much money on defense. Defensive culture, 25th in rushing average. So let's throw a Hail Mary to save our offense. What's ironic is that this is the one position that the Steelers draft and develop exceedingly well on offense is wide receiver. They've been great at it for 20 years. Go back to Hines Ward. They've always drafted and developed wide receiver talent. So why spend $150 million on Metcalf? The Steelers thinking they can solve their offense by adding an expensive, high-maintenance wide receiver is like thinking you can solve your car troubles by putting in some premium leather seating. Yeah, that ain't it, man. Well, the thing that just drives me up a wall with Colin's commentary on the Pittsburgh Steelers is that he will criticize the Pittsburgh Steelers for spending too much money on defense and not spending enough money on the offense, right? It's one of his core kind of arguments, and, this is one that is actually a little bit understandable. Maybe the Steelers do spend too much money on the defensive side of the ball in an offensive league to truly compete for championships year in and year out. That take is perfectly fine. But then when they actually go out and pay a wide receiver a lot of money and then bring in a star player to help out the offense, you can't then turn around and say that that is a stupid move. All right? It's like, pick one, Colin. Like, do you want to spend money on offense or don't you? All right? And when they actually do what you want to do, you can't just say this is a bad move. All right? I think that it's just crazy logic that Colin is using here. But there's also a false narrative that he used here on DK Metcalf, in my opinion, which is that he is a high-maintenance receiver. Anybody that's been a teammate of DK Metcalf tells you that he's one of the most respectful people you will ever meet, but he was, frustrated with Ryan Grubb, the Seattle Seahawks offensive coordinator last year, and he was a bit disgruntled with Seattle because they weren't using him right. I mean, I think less than 5% of his routes run last year were slant routes, something that he is absolutely known for. That's not going to be a problem in Pittsburgh whatsoever. He's going to get fed the ball. He's going to be used in the right way by Arthur Smith, so I don't expect any issues from DK Metcalf. So to call him a high-maintenance player, I think, is a false narrative, and that's something we're used to now with all the Aaron Rodgers stuff here in Pittsburgh. But I think DK is going to be just fine here in Pittsburgh, and it was a hell of a move to go out and get him. The second thing, and another trade that Colin wasn't a big fan of, was the big blockbuster trade for Jalen Ramsey last week. He thought that trade was a bad one. And this is what he had to say about the trade between the Steelers and the Dolphins last week that he wasn't too favorable of. He says, what do you know? Bounce around the league guy, Jalen Ramsey, $26.5 million. The Steelers got him. Now they did move off of Minkah Fitzpatrick, but Minkah is low maintenance, $7 million a year cheaper, a leader in the room, not a bounce around the league guy. So the Steelers can't help themselves. And now they're spending $7.5 million more than they were yesterday in the secondary, and for the record has led the NFL in defensive spending three years in a row. This will guarantee it's 4. I could have been okay moving off of Minkah Fitzpatrick, though I liked him, but then adding a guy, Ramsey, that's looser, is a bounce around the league guy now, and the $7.5 million more you're guaranteed to pay pre-TJ Watt contract, not good. Now, Colin, the guy that thinks you can trade first-round picks in the MLB draft, doesn't understand that there's a difference between cash and cap spending, all right? Like, you can pay a player a lot of money, but based on the option bonuses and a bunch of different cap maneuverings, you can actually lower the cap hit, which is exactly what the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be doing on the Jalen Ramsey deal this season. So the Steelers are going to be spending $26.5 million in cash spending to Jalen Ramsey. That is absolutely true. Okay, the Steelers will be spending more cash on Jalen Ramsey than they would have spent on just Minkah Fitzpatrick this year. But because he has a massive option bonus this year that gets distributed over multiple seasons, the cap hit for 2025 for the Steelers when it comes to Ramsey is only $6.8 million. So they actually save money against the cap on defense with this deal. And then you take a look at the cap hits, okay? Jalen Ramsey with the dead cap hit from Minkah Fitzpatrick plus that $6.8 million that we just talked about, the Steelers against the cap, only $13.67 million is going to be going to that Jalen Ramsey deal. But with Minkah Fitzpatrick, you would have had to pay more than that. In fact, almost $10 million more than that for just Minkah Fitzpatrick, okay? So the Steelers are going to save cap room with this deal this year. Now, keep in mind, we don't know the exact details of the restructuring of Ramsey's contract yet, so these numbers might be different in a couple of weeks. These are kind of the estimated numbers, but it's still going to be significantly less, and Cowherd doesn't understand how contracts work in the National Football League, so obviously he doesn't like it. Also, he called Jalen Ramsey a quote-unquote loose player. What the hell does that even mean? Like, does he even know what that means? I think what he does mean by that is that he kind of goes against the structure of a defense and kind of goes rogue, does his own thing. But if that's actually what he means, Minkah Fitzpatrick is like the king of that, all right? What Minkah is known for and what he refers to as quote-unquote Minkah ball is that he's going against the structure of the defense because he sees something in the offensive formation, what they're doing route-wise, and he goes and makes a play away from his defensive assignment. And for years, this is what made him an all-pro. This is what made him arguably the best safety in football for multiple seasons. But over the last 2 years, that Minkah ball style hasn't worked out as much for him because he's lost a step athletically. So, if you're talking about loose players, the Steelers just unloaded one, and Jalen Ramsey doesn't do it nearly as much as Minkah Fitzpatrick does, so that's a stupid criticism from somebody that doesn't know football. Plus, on top of all that, he doesn't even mention that the Steelers got Jonnu Smith in this deal, who's a really good tight end. He fits exactly what the Pittsburgh Steelers are looking for in a manufactured touch guy to use on screens. He was top 5 last year in forced missed tackles with the Miami Dolphins last year, one of the best screen threats in the National Football League. Doesn't even, get a mention in this breakdown from Colin Cowherd, who hates this deal for the Pittsburgh Steelers for stupid reasons. Then we get into another clown take from Cowherd today, this offseason, which is that the Pittsburgh Steelers are quote-unquote making moves just to make moves and that they don't have a plan for this offseason. They're just making moves, just because, all right? They don't have a plan. Well, you take a look at this graphic that Cowherd used on his show to kind of break down this point for why he thinks that they didn't make any good moves this year and why they think that why he thinks this team is worse than it was in 2024. And, he looks at that additions, and you got Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf, all the older players, to show that graphic where the average age is 32 years old, and he lists all the losses. And if you just look at all the names in the two categories, you might think, wow, the Steelers got a lot worse here in 2025. Well, here's a couple of things that you need to know about. I think, purposefully left out some very key additions for the Steelers this year that are younger, by the way. Derek Harmon and Caleb Johnson, their first 2 picks in the draft this year, are going to play big roles for their offense and defense this year. Juan Thornhill is going to be probably their starting free safety. Didn't make the graphic, unfortunately. And these guys would have reduced that average age, but he wanted the average age 32 on the graphic there, so that's probably why he left these guys out. And then he didn't even mention the guys that are returning from injury. Roman Wilson, Troy Fautano, 2 rookies that lost their rookie campaigns to major injuries. And then Cole Holcomb, who didn't play last year with a major injury in his own right. He will be returning as well. So when you add those names to the list, the Steelers got better this year pretty clearly, in my opinion. And I don't think there's really any argument to the contrary if you've been watching what the Pittsburgh Steelers have been able to do here during the 2025 offseason. Like, Roman Wilson is going to be able to come in here and be a really good run blocker. The reports out of camp for him have been fantastic. Troy Fautano looks really good as well. And you look at the losses that the Steelers made on that graphic that I think have been upgraded with better players. Russell Wilson, all right, better. Aaron Rodgers is better than him. Same thing goes for Justin Fields. Dan Moore Moore Jr., one of the most expensive offensive tackles in the league now. He is mid at best. All right, letting him go is a good one. All right, Najee Harris, somebody that, even though he got over 1,000 yards for every single year he was here in Pittsburgh, his efficiency was terrible. Dante Jackson couldn't hold up in man coverage. Darius Slay is a lot better than him. George Pickens, DK Metcalf is a better version of George Pickens right now. Van Jefferson, he was absolutely terrible. Give me Calvin Austin III or Roman Wilson above Van Jefferson. Larry Ogunjobi, give me Derek Harmon over him. And then Minkah Fitzpatrick, I think Jalen Ramsey from the slot is going to be a bigger impact than what Minkah would have done at the safety position. And then for two other guys on that graphic, James Daniels and Landon Roberts, if Mason McCormick, the second-year guy out of South Dakota State, and Peyton Wilson, the second-year guy out of NC State, turn up to be good starters at those respective positions, then you also upgraded those two positions as well. So you look at the Steelers roster as a whole here, guys, and for the most part, it has been absolutely upgraded. The coaching, for the most part, is pretty much the same. Head coach is the same. Both coordinators are back. So the coaching's about the same, but quarterback is undeniably better with Aaron Rodgers. The running back room with Caleb Johnson is no doubt upgraded compared to what it was with Najee Harris. The wide receivers are better because you're getting Roman Wilson in here. The tight ends are better with Jonnu Smith being injected. The O-line is better because you're getting Troy Fautano and hopefully Broderick Jones, and Mason McCormick will take another step this year. The defensive line is better with the addition of Derek Harmon. The linebackers are potentially upgraded if Peyton Wilson is as good as advertised. The secondary is definitely upgraded with Jalen Ramsey and Darius Slay being injected into here. And then with Cameron Johnson, the punter, coming back from injury this year, the special teams is better. So I just don't know how Cowherd can view this team as worse heading into this year compared to where it was last year. And that was another clown take that he had here, guys, where he thinks Pittsburgh's roster is worse this year than it was last year. And, I just don't see how you could possibly say this. This is what Cowherd had to say about the moves that the Steelers have made this year. So they get rid of a safety, Minkah Fitzpatrick, who's a little past his prime, and they add a corner who's more expensive, Jalen Ramsey, who's past his prime. They get rid of a very high-maintenance wide receiver, George Pickens, and then they inherit a wide receiver who can be high-maintenance, DK Metcalf. You're just making moves to make moves. There is no plan. Now, Colin, there is a plan here in place for the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's just not one that he likes, all right? The Pittsburgh Steelers very clearly, in my opinion, have a plan to try and compete for a championship this year. Obviously, some things need to go their way with the development of certain young players and such. And, Aaron Rodgers needs to show that he can have a bounce-back season. But this is their plan right here, guys, all right? Number one, they want to have an elite defense and pass rush. They have the talent in this group to be able to do that if their top players stay healthy. Then they want a ground-and-pound run game led by Caleb Johnson and Jalen Warren. If the offensive line takes the proper steps and Caleb is as good as I think he is, that's going to work out. They want a smart and explosive passing game that doesn't throw too many interceptions. If the run game is there, I have every confidence Aaron Rodgers can run that style of offense. And then once again, have the best special teams in the National Football League. Danny Smith is going to have those guys ready to go. So I think that Pittsburgh has the potential to execute this plan and truly become a Super Bowl contender this year. Obviously, some things need to go their way, but to say that they just don't have a plan and that they're just making moves to make moves, I think is a completely asinine statement and somebody that doesn't understand what the Steelers are doing right now. And in terms of plans, the last person that I would be trusting with making a good plan for the offseason is Colin Cowherd himself, because he actually laid out his preferred plan for the Steelers this year, and that plan was to trade not only TJ Watt, not only George Pickens, but also not one, but two first-round picks in exchange for Shedeur Sanders, who went in the 5th round. All right, that was Colin Cowherd's plan for the Pittsburgh Steelers heading into the 2025 offseason, and that would have been absolutely disastrous. That's the type of move that gets you fired in the NFL if you make that move, and that's the plan that Colin would have preferred for this football team. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already, because this is why you subscribe to Steelers Talk. If you're tired of hearing about football from guys that don't know football like Colin Cowherd and those other people at Fox Sports, you guys can click that subscribe button and join us here at Steelers Talk. We are currently the largest individually run Steelers news program anywhere on YouTube. That is for a reason. So make sure you click that subscribe button if you haven't already for that daily dose of Steelers news.